What's your desperate times call for desperate measures story? My golden retriever robot was having seizures when I rushed him into the emergency vet at 2 in the morning, but the receptionist wouldn't let anyone examine him without $800 up front, and my credit card was declined. Robot was foaming at the mouth with labored breathing, while everyone in the waiting room watched me beg for an exception. I called my ex-wife, who laughed and hung up. My brother's phone went straight to voicemail. My parents were on a cruise ship somewhere in the Caribbean. Robot had gone from seizures to barely breathing, and his gums were turning white. A man in the waiting room stood up and shouted that this was animal cruelty, but the receptionist calmly explained that they were a business and couldn't provide free services. That dog is dying right in front of you, he said, pulling out his phone to record. She responded by pointing to a sign that said, recording was prohibited on the premises. Another woman offered me $200 in cash, but that still left me $600 short, and the receptionist wouldn't accept partial payment. I suddenly remembered my neighbor doctor. Claire was a veterinarian, and I still had her number from when I watered her plants last summer. We weren't close, but desperation made me call her at 3 in the morning. She answered groggily, but when she heard Robot seizing in the background, she said she'd be there in 10 minutes. She burst through the clinic doors in pajamas and sneakers, took one look at Robot, and marched straight past the reception desk. The receptionist started protesting, but Dr. Claire flashed her veterinary license and said she was taking responsibility for this emergency case. This dog is going into organ failure, she announced loudly enough for everyone to hear while examining Robot on the waiting room floor. The clinic vet suddenly appeared from the back looking annoyed, but Dr. Claire started rattling off medical terminology about toxicity levels and liability issues. Something about her tone made him back down, and he agreed to examine Robot immediately. They rushed him into the back while Dr. Claire stayed with me, explaining she could only get him examined, but not pay for any treatment he might need. The veterinarian came out 40 minutes later and told me Robot had ingested rat poison and needed immediate treatment, costing $3,200 up front. I stared at him in disbelief, and he said their policy was strict about payment before treatment, especially for critical cases that required expensive medications and overnight monitoring. Dr. Claire tried to intervene, but he said she'd already overstepped enough, and this was a business matter now. Your dog will die without this treatment, he said matter-of-factly, but I can give you some time to figure out payment options. I asked how much time Robot had left, and he checked his watch before saying maybe 2 hours if we were lucky. He handed me an estimate sheet and walked back through the door, while Dr. Claire apologized and said she wished she could do more, but she didn't have the money on hand either. The man who'd been recording earlier offered me $500, but that still left me $2,700 short. I asked the receptionist if I could at least buy the medications directly and administer them myself, but she said only licensed veterinarians could handle controlled substances. I could hear Robot whimpering from somewhere in the back and asked if I could see him while I tried to figure something out. The receptionist said he was being kept comfortable, but visiting would require signing liability waivers that were part of the treatment package I hadn't paid for yet. Dr. Claire looked disgusted and walked out saying she needed to make some calls. I sat in that waiting room watching the clock, and knowing every minute that passed brought Robot closer to death. The other people had mostly left, but the man with the $500 was still there, pressing the money into my hand, saying he wished he could do more. I made a decision right then that would probably destroy my life, but might save Robot. I told the receptionist I needed to get something from my car and walked out into the parking lot where I made a phone call I'd sworn I'd never make. My old college roommate Zeke picked up on the third ring even though it was 3:30 in the morning. I'll do it, I said, without even saying hello. Whatever you need me to do for your business, I'll do it, but I need $3,200 in the next hour. Zeke laughed and said he'd been waiting 2 years for this call. Check your phone, he said, and the payment notification popped up instantly. I walked back inside and paid for Robot's treatment, but as they wheeled him away, Zeke texted me 5 words that made my blood run cold. Your first pickup is tonight. Full story on the channel below.